BC's landed a few solid transfers so far. Nothing very glitzy, but on Wednesday night, BC landed a top 100 transfer that's going to make you want to hear more about it. We'll get into that in a moment.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black, editor and publisher of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 network. Check out my work over there. Big news today. Before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right, so BC lands a big-time commitment, the biggest one of their class so far, and we haven't had Mitch on because Mitch, the season's been kind of quiet right now, but we like to have him on at least once a week, and we got him here now. This is Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider. He's my staff writer. If you are a VIP member or even just a reader, you know exactly who he is. Mitch, how's it going?
Going well. It has been a little while, but we've kind of known about some of these for some time, or at least had good feelings about them, but obviously we want to wait until they all come in. And these were I think these were three that we kind of were alerted to pretty early on. So It kind of made sense to wait until we got all three of them confirmed, because I think Treshaun Ward is obviously the big name, but I think the two other ones that that BC has locked in, have also been pretty important. And I think we'll get into why in this episode.
Right. So if you guys follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247, I said this last night. I use a Wired GIF. Joe Sullivan used to do Rick Ross, and now the current staff does nothing. And I want to get you guys excited about it because I get excited in a weird way when BC lands a transfer or a commitment. So if you see those going, and you guys saw Brother Mazzone last night, this is what I was talking about. This is Treshaun Ward. He is a running back who was on campus last week. He took an official visit. It was the only visit he took, as far as I know, and committed pretty quickly afterwards. This is a big deal. Mitch, why is this a big deal?
Treshaun Ward is a guy that I've kind of known about tangentially for a few years now. He was a running back at Florida State previously. He spent last year at Kansas State, and he's never been the star, but he's always been a very serviceable player. And, we've said how big a commitment this is, and it's like, oh, he's just a serviceable player. It's like, he's a good player. And Florida State, kind of a weird situation where they have Jashaun Corbin when he's coming up there. So Jashaun Corbin's the lead back, then Trey Benson transfers in, so he's the lead back. But Treshaun Ward is he's a complete running back in the sense that he does all the little things right. He's a good, maybe not spectacular athlete. He's not huge, but he's not tiny. But he's a leader. He's experienced. He has very good vision. His story is very interesting. So he was a very accomplished player coming out of high school, and I think he was a 3-star recruit at least.
Yep.
But he ended up walking on at Florida State just because that was his dream school.
Yeah, he was committed to Maryland, I think, or something.
Yeah, which you can obviously say Florida State's a premier program, but Maryland's nothing to slouch at. But he says, no, I want to go to my dream school. I know, and eventually, manifested what he wanted to do and said, I'm going to go there. I'm going to walk on, and he earned a scholarship. He was on scout team for 2 years essentially, and earned scout team player of the year. I think at least 2 years. I have his bio up here. And then in 2021, he finally gets into the lineup and, becomes a real important contributor for this team. And they were still kind of figuring things out with Norvell. I think they went 5-7 that year, but productive season as a rusher and receiver, has some kick return ability. And the thing that impresses me is that he made ACC honor roll every year except 2022, which is his final year at Florida State. He was a Seminole Scholar every year, and a Burlsworth Trophy semifinalist in 2022 and a nominee in 21. And Burlsworth is it's trophy given to them. I guess I'm not exactly sure what the qualifier is. It's a best or most impressive walk-on or former walk-on. So very cool story of how he was able to kind of accomplish his goal of walking on at Florida State, contributing really meaningfully there, and then graduating from his dream school, and then he transfers over to Kansas State. Kansas State loses Deuce Vaughn to the NFL, who was extremely accomplished there, and they want another running back to kind of fill that role. Ultimately, let me see, what was the guy's name? DJ Giddens, I think.
Gideon, yep.
DJ Giddens at Kansas State was still the lead back, but Ward kind of still filled the complementary role, and they that offense went a different direction. Will Howard transfers out, and they actually lose their offensive coordinator, Colin Klein. Yes, that former Kansas State quarterback, Colin Klein, to be the offensive coordinator at Kansas State. So then he hits the portal again and ends up at BC. And I'm excited for this because obviously this year we saw how injuries at the running back position really mounted for BC as the year continued. And we know that BC is going to want to continue to run the ball this upcoming season. And they still have Kye Robichaux. They still have Alex Broom. They have young guys like Datrell Jones, who redshirted last year. They have Turbo Richard coming in. I know some people on the board wanted Raheem Rocket Sanders from Arkansas, who's going to South Carolina, so they could have Rocket and Turbo in the backfield. But, can't always have the best things. But Ward is definitely more than a serviceable player. I really like how he fits in this team because, Robichaux is going to be the thunder. He's going to be the power back. But Ward gives you a very solid, serviceable number 2 option that can be the lead back if need be for a game or two. And he can basically take some off the plate of Robichaux, so he doesn't have to carry the weight all by himself, and even take some of the weight off Thomas Castellanos, so he can ideally stay more healthy throughout the season.
So, I can hear BC fans gnashing their teeth a little bit when you said that he's a walk-on. People are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, he's a walk-on." This is what we're excited about. So, just for some perspective, from a 247 sports perspective, he is a top 100 transfer. There's 2,000 plus transfers out there. He's borderline 4-star. He is who is it? Chris, one of the guys, I'm totally blanking on which guy did it, but put the top 10 running backs up there, and he was like number 7. So this is not just he's serviceable, but this is a guy that I think a lot of folks probably wanted. And it's impressive that even with all the talk about the, hot seat and 6-6 and whatever, that BC was still able to land him.
Yeah, I mean, Ward for the last 3 seasons over 2 schools, he's put up over 650 yards from scrimmage and 19 touchdowns over the last 3 years. So, he's very productive when given opportunities, but I mean, maybe not as the lead guy, but when you can have a rotation, and that's what BC has with Robichaux, Ward, and even Broom now. And it's kind of interesting. I think Broom is actually kind of the home run threat guy, because the one thing about Ward is he maybe doesn't have that elite long speed. But I think the idea is that with the way the BC's offense is going to be structured is defenses are going to have to be worried about the inside run with Robichaux and the threat of Castellanos going to the outside. And I'm really hoping that this signals BC being willing to employ more 2 running back sets and employ some kind of pseudo triple option plays, because the way that would work is then you can really spread the defense out because they have so many responsibilities going in different directions. And then because of that misdirection and confusion, you might not need the elite speed because the defense is behind a step mentally based on what you're running on offense.
Oh, triple option BC or any form of triple option with what they have here, that would be, I think, at least it would be entertaining.
Yeah, for sure. And I think these are all explosive players who can beat defenses in different kinds of ways. So defenses will have to prepare for all kinds of different stuff.
And Mitch's cat also agrees with this.
He's here. He's back.
All right. So in a moment, we're going to talk about how the 3 transfers fill in. We kind of already talked about Treshaun Ward, but let's look at the other 2 because I want to get Mitch's perspective. Mitch has a good, knowledge of everything. But PrizePicks is the most fun I've had for about up to 25 times my money this football season, and now I can play during basketball season too. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the special leagues, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo, or 3 points made and receptions. Want to play along favorite celebrities like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can find them in the community tab. So easy to use, and you get paid instantly. Love how they have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It satiates any appetite for anyone who's looking to do some daily fantasy. So go to prizepicks.com right now and go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. I love having Mitch here, and Mitch is an Eagle Insider writer and has been doing a lot of great work over there. And you can catch him on the board. You know, he was giving comments about some of the transfers and recruits. He also does his writing. He's getting ready to prep for the SMU game at the Fenway Bowl. And right now, until I think it's till December 20th, we have a 50% off sale. If you want to get transfer portal nuggets, you got me. I am as locked into this stuff as you can get. I know everything. I've talked to a lot of different people. I'm getting all the scoops. Get over there. It's like $3 a month, and you're supporting our work. If you like us, come support us too. Go sign up. We'll make it worth your money. We promise. Now, Mitch, let's talk a little bit about the three transfers, and kind of like where you see BC at so far. What kind of is your first initial thought after this first kind of flurry?
So the first thing that I see when I look at these three players is that they're very experienced players. They've been around for a while. They've started a bunch of games at almost at the Power 5 level. Bryce Brown has not done that. It's been at the G5 level, so I almost misspoke there. But guys who have a lot of playing experience. They know what they're doing. They've been around a while. They're also leaders. I mentioned that Treshaun Ward was a former walk-on and worked his way up in the starting lineup. He was an academic ACC ACC honor roll member, Seminole Scholar. So he's clearly somebody who was a leader on that team. Bryce Brown was a captain at Georgia State. Kamari Morales was on the Student Athlete Advisory Council for the North Carolina football team. So all of these guys play leadership roles for their respective teams. And I think that's important given kind of what BC is returning on offense, because you're losing a guy like Christian Mahogany, who was very clearly the heart and soul of this offense. Kyle Hergel, who's kind of that physical enforcer. You're losing him on the offense, and you're not losing you're losing Pat Garwa, who's a very experienced player there. And you're losing George Takis and Ryan O'Keefe, guys who again last year when they came in were all kind of very experienced players. And have been around for a while, and you kind of need to replace that leadership element, because obviously, you have a guy like Thomas Castellanos who's going to be your kind of de facto leader as the quarterback, lead with his explosive plays, that kind of thing. But you want to have some other guys on the roster who are going to be playing a lot, who are going to be able to lead by example and have experience in those roles. So I think that's really important. In terms of their actual roles, ironically enough, I think Ward is probably of the three, the least likely to be the quote starter, because I think Bryce Brown is probably going to slot in to be the starting corner opposite Amari Jackson. I was talking to somebody on the staff. They were saying he has inside-outside versatility. He's mostly played outside at Georgia State. I still have to get into the film and kind of see how effective he is at both. But so that's something. And then I think Kamari Morales it's going to be kind of tough, because watching him, it's clear this is going to be tough for fans to get, because he is very, very, very different from what George Takis brings. George Takis, ironically enough, was basically a sixth offensive lineman for BC, and when he got hurt, they just went with that in reality by moving Jack Conley to tight end. Obviously, Takis had some issues with drops, wasn't particularly dynamic after the catch, but he was an excellent run blocker, pretty solid pass blocker as well, and he was very good at setting the edge as a on-line of scrimmage inline tight end. Kamari Morales is not that. He is a lot smaller, and he is much more of a move tight end style player, almost kind of like a fullback or H-back. If you think back in BC history, kind of like a Korab Adrizi or Ray Martin type of player, or even Chris Garrison. So he's a very different style of player, but he is significantly more reliable as a receiver than Takis. He's very good at catching over the middle, fighting seams and zones, and because he is kind of shorter and more compact, he's stout and difficult to bring down. So that's helpful against linebackers and defensive backs. And then Ward, as we've kind of talked about, is going to be able to just, further distribute the touches on offense so that it's less likely any individual player gets hurt or gets worn down from the number of snaps they're taking. So I think this is a good job to get 3 guys who are going to be taking significant snaps for BC at their respective positions. I think that they still have a good amount of work to do in transfer portal at a few position groups, but it's obviously early. There's still a bunch of names in the portal, and they're clearly very busy about getting offers out and expressing interest in players. So it's clearly not done yet. They've still got some work, and they're working on getting some more players.
So you brought up something, and I was just wondering, is there a possibility next year that they use Morales as just kind of like their, receiving tight end, and then just throw Jack Conley out there a whole bunch?
No, I'm not sure they'll do that, because I do think that Jeremiah Franklin has taken. He's still not Takis yet either, but I think he's taken a lot of steps as a blocking tight end compared to where he was in 2022, and obviously he's taken steps as a receiver as well. I do think that we're going to see some more of Matt Reagan. I thought this is obviously a very limited sample size and relatively insignificant, but when he did play in the spring game, I was impressed with what he brought to the table as a blocker. Ideally this year, he has a year to redshirt, get stronger, understand how to play in college football. I don't think he took many snaps, but, just kind of understand the vibes, if you will. So this offseason, they can kind of get him trained up to be that de facto inline tight end. So, I think that could be, I think they're pretty okay at that position. We obviously have, are we allowed to talk about the other transfer tight end yet?
Not yet. Okay. I can tease that there's a crystal ball out there that I put out. And if you're a VIP member, as I was just saying on the board, you can find out who that is. And I expect a decision on there in the next 24 hours.
Yeah. So, that'll add something else, and we'll talk about that once we get to it. But, I think that position is kind of settled as for now. But I think we'll get into the other positions of need as we get further into this podcast.
Yes, exactly. So it's a good, I'm happy with the start that Jeff Hafley's had so far. He's hitting the needs that they have, getting experience and building depth. And that's what they need. And they've got guys that can do some things too, right? Like, you're not just getting guys that are warm bodies, you're getting some guys that are making your team better.
And that was the whole point of that. In that podcast, we talked about BC's shifting strategy in the portal shifting just overall recruiting strategies to get guys in the portal that can come in immediately and be significant players as either starters or very important situational role players, which is more along the lines of Ward, because I don't think he's going to be the technical starter, but I think you're going to see a pretty relatively even distribution of snaps and touches between Kye Robichaux, him, and Alex Broom.
Now, in our final segment, Mitch and I are going to look at what's the rest of the needs, and we'll discuss some of the things that folks have been saying and give our thoughts about where BC should be looking in the transfer portal with those remaining slots. Now, as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you want to get your $150, I got a real easy bet for you. Patriots and the Chiefs this weekend. Go ahead, make that bet against the Pats, because they ain't no way they're winning that game. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get in on that action. Use my pick here. I know I did poorly with Mitch on our college football picks, but I feel pretty good about this one. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. It's easy. I love it. Instant withdrawals of your funds. If you win, it's great. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. This is Locked On BC, AJ Black, and we're talking transfer portal. This has kind of been, it's dwarfing any talk about prepping for the Fenway Bowl, but Mitch and I will talk more about where that will be coming up. And it's hard to get, like, I'm going to try to get Beacon Street Ball back on this week. But when there's like breaking news constantly about football, and as I said, that kind of rules the roost.
Well, we also enter a dead period next week, right?
Yeah, dead period starts next week too, right? Mm-hmm. So this weekend, well, that dead period in a sense is a the
coma period,
not having people on, but they're going to be getting the results from this weekend next week. So it's like no real dead period for us. You know what I mean? For the people covering it. So Mitch, we have 3 commitments right now. I kind of have projected BC around anywhere around like 15 plus transfers for next year. They had 10 last year. I feel like they need to really build some depth. Let's look at the offensive side of the ball right now. What other needs does BC still have on the offense?
So I think this is more informed discussion. We talk about where I don't think they have needs and where I don't think they're going to try to get players. So the first thing I think is that I honestly don't think they're going to be. Well, first of all, I think they're kind of done at tight end. I think they're kind of ready to go there. Yeah. I also think they're pretty good at running back. I think that they're fine with the guys they have now. They have a solid 3-headed rotation of guys with FBS experience, and then 2 younger guys coming in that can spell them if need be. That's five running backs of guys who know what they're doing. So that's fine with me. Yep. I think that offensive line is honestly fine as currently constructed. And I say that from the sense that I would rather them use a scholarship for a transfer person somewhere else where there is a more dire need, because we know that they're losing Christian Mahogany and Kyle Hergel. But I feel decent about the guys who are on the depth chart, who have been with this team for a while, that can step in and be maybe not as dominant as those guys were, but they can be solid starters. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think Jack Conley can be a decent starting guard. I think Kevin Klein, who was going to be BC's starting right tackle in 2021 before he got hurt, he can be a solid starting guard. And I think Jude Bowery can be a solid starting guard. So of those 3 guys, I think you can find something. You also have guys like Otto Hess and Dwayne Alec, who have been on the team for a while. They haven't played a ton, but they at least know what they're doing. They're quality depth players. So I think relative to what BC really needs, I think interior offensive line is actually not that big of a need.
So I'm going to say, though, I'm guessing the way that they've been addressing the portal, I don't think the staff agrees with you, because they've been going hard on interior offensive linemen. There's been a ton of offers.
If they can get one that is a starter and can be an impact player like a Hergel, and you probably can't find a Mahogany out there, so that's fair. But if you can find a guy like Kyle Hergel who can come in and be a good player like that, then that's fine. I'm just saying, from my personal perspective, I think that it would be useful to use it elsewhere. But if they get a guy, I'm fine with that. I do not think that they're going to be going after a quarterback in the portal, because you're essentially going out and trying to find a quarterback that would be a backup for Castellanos. And I think those are hard to find, because most quarterbacks that are entering the transfer portal are entering to find a place where they can play, not a place where they can compete or be the backup. So I don't think that I feel like you said that they've been kicking the tires on some guys, but I think that that's relatively low on their priority list.
Right.
Okay. And so then that leaves us wide receiver. And I think that that's a tough one, because obviously I like what Lewis Bond did this past year. Get Dino Tomlin back. He's a reliable player. You have guys like Jaden Skeet who flashed, a guy like Nate Johnson who was a role player, but maybe you can, expect some development from him. And then you still have Joseph Griffin, who not his best year, had some good moments, had some bad moments. So you have some guys there that are solid. And again, this is kind of a situation where if you can go out and find a guy, similar to Ryan O'Keefe, where it's like, okay, this bumps everybody down the depth chart a little bit, and that makes everything more comfortable, that's fine. But if you can't, I'm not going to throw a fit over it. So that's how I feel about the offense. On the defense, and this is the big side of the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they definitely still need a lot of help in the secondary. I think that they need to find a starting safety, maybe 2, because I think it was a bit of a rough year for Cole Batts, and the strong safety position was particularly problematic. And I do like what KP Price did this season, given that he was a true freshman and he played a lot and progressed as the season went on. So I like his future, but I think you need a guy that can step in and not force Price to be that starter.
He needs like another year to.
Yes, exactly. And another year where he can be just a rotational player. He doesn't have to be the starter.
Right.
And if you can find another free safety that can kind of maybe reduce Batson's role or change it a little bit, that's great too. You probably need another start. You need another cornerback that can start, because, and now that Clink Scales is gone, and again, we were kind of surprised by Clink Scales departing. You're losing a player who, again, some inconsistent results, but I think he was playing for the most part. Like, okay, if we, project him out to at least develop a little bit each year, he can be a serviceable, adequate starter, if you will. So you need to find some guys there, because Jalen Cheek was really rough. Max Tucker was obviously a true freshman, but had his share of struggles. And then you're pretty thin at that position group, honestly, because Jalen Williams is also mostly a special teams player. I wonder if they move Kari Johnson down to slot corner, especially for the bowl game, at least, because they need somebody to play there, and he has some experience. Linebackers, and I know people aren't going to like this, but I think they are fine with the linebackers they have. And I would like them I wish they were being more aggressive at going out to find somebody, but I just don't think they are. And
yeah, there's no offers. following where BC's, the cookie crumbs of where they've been offering, have not seen a single linebacker.
Yeah. And I don't love that strategy, but that just seems to be the one that they're going with. And I can see why, in that they are getting Cam Arnold back for another year. And I know he's inconsistent, but this was his best year by far, which again, not the cleanest of compliments, but you have a guy like that who's a veteran. You are probably, it seems like they're going to get Bryce Steele back next year, which is great. I know he, again, wasn't the best player, but it's good to get him back. Good that he's going to be able to play football again. You're getting Jalen Blackwell back from injury, who I like Jalen Blackwell a decent bit as long as his role is used properly. I liked what Davion Crouch brought in limited snaps this year. And ideally, you're getting Sione Hollis some more snaps. Maybe move Owen McGowan back to linebacker so he doesn't have to play fullback anymore. And I know, and they like what those guys have developed and what they're doing with them. And I think we can quibble with that strategy. I'm not the biggest fan of it. But that seems to be the way they're going. And that's just how it is. On the defensive line, I think they're solid where they are there. I think they're fine with where they're at too. I think that they obviously love Ezra. They love Horsley. I think George Brooks is an adequate starter. I think I don't understand why they didn't play Quan Williams as much as they did. I think he needs more snaps. Nigel Tate is a fine depth player. You'll get Caleb Jones back after he missed the year with an injury, so maybe you can see what he can do. And then on the other defensive end spot, I mean, I think that the rotation of, they can find some guys out of Nito Ekpala, Edwin Kalengi, and Gilbert Tungrangu. And also you get Ty Clemens back from injury. And they've got some other young guys. They're like Clive Wilson, Josiah Griffin. I would almost say Joseph again. So yeah. I think they're fine with where they are now. And I think you're kind of just banking on, okay, last year we got pressure. We just were historically bad at being able to convert that into sacks. And that maybe regresses to the mean this year. So I think they're fine with defensive up front, but I think they're going to be very aggressive in the secondary and not really at linebackers, which again, I'm not the biggest fan of, but that just seems to be the way they're going.
The other position I've seen a lot of movement on is interior defensive line. So looking for someone,
which is kind of surprising given that I thought Rooks was okay. I don't know why they don't like Quan anymore, but so that's a little surprising to me, but I guess I think there's also just a lot of those guys out there. So you can ideally find somebody that is going to be a meaningful player at that position.
So yeah. And Mitch, before we go, Chris brought up something, and I would love your thoughts on this. We have like 2 minutes, so I'll let you run with it. Rising tide lifts all boats. Need another pass rusher. I've seen this a lot, and I know you have your thoughts on the pass rush. I know they didn't play great, but how much of that was on the secondary being just bad?
I think that's part of it. I think there were a lot of things that played a role. I think that them just missing a lot of sacks just was like unlucky. A lot of times they also played like quarterbacks and systems that were designed to get the ball out quickly. So that was part of it. So there were some elements of that, but I also think the secondary did play a role. And obviously that's harder to see on the broadcast just because you're not seeing what's going on in the secondary. But if the quarterback is getting rid of the ball more quickly because guys are open, then that's going to take away opportunities for the pass rush. And I ran this equation where essentially I found that based on BC's pressure rate, which was, I think they ranked it was like 30th or something. So pretty good, or I think that was it. And then they blitzed, I think at like in the 50s in terms of ranking. So, they were doing good with pressure. They were blitzing a decent amount, but they were, second to worst in sacks. And I think they had 12 sacks, and based on the number of pressures and the number of sacks based on like every other team in the country this year, they should have had like 20 or 21 sacks. So some of that is, when I talk about regression, I mean, that's what I'm talking about is, BC has this historically bad outlier of a season when it comes to sacks. So next year you hope that kind of normalizes back. I would like to, if you can find somebody that can be, I think you mentioned on the site that there's a Clemson transfer that they've been interested in, that they've offered. So he could add some juice there. But I think that's why I think there's a lot of elements that go into why the pass rush struggled so much. And it's not just like these players are bad. There's a lot more that goes into it than that.
All right. This is going to wrap things up. Mitch, where can people find your work?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. Obviously check out Eagle Insider. We got a lot of stuff coming up for the Fenway Bowl. In the next week, we'll be publishing a lot of that. I'm actually going to be going to the game. So that'll be exciting, be able to give live updates as we see them from the Fenway Bowl. So, and obviously, we've got their transfer portal that'll be kicking in, that'll be going out through the next few weeks, and that's going to be huge for BC. And yeah, just a lot of great content. We've added a lot of really, really great personalities there that are creating some, like, I mean, it's not even close that this is the best BC sports content that you're going to find on the internet. So make sure you go over to Eagle Insider and check that out.
Yeah, you got Mitch, you got me, you got Beacon Street Ball with basketball. I mean, the stuff he's putting out there is second to none. And you got BC Hockey Blogger who knows everything about hockey. Come over to Eagle Insider. You're not gonna. It's worth every penny. And I've made it so it's not just my voice. I wanted a lot of voices there, and I'm really excited where we're going with this. So this is AJ Black. Follow me on Twitter at AJ Black 247. Hopefully we'll have some more recruiting news tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about Henry Hasselbeck and what's going on with that. I have some updates on there. I want to talk to you about that and everything else going on. Thank you for listening. Please hit that like and subscribe button before you head out. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day.